So first to start off by saying that if you've come to learn any Sky Ninja skills, you've come to very much the wrong room, okay? And that's not for me trying to self-deprecate or be humble for the crowd. There are things I do well. This and things like this is what I do well. Your cave diving, deep technical diving. Skydiving, not so much. I've racked up just over 500 jumps, which if you have got your A or B license, that probably sounds like a lot, but believe you me, it's not. I can have had great grand hopes that when I finally got my C license, I'd be some sort of sky god and no fear and be amazing at everything and always land in the circle. It's still not happening, I'm afraid. And if you think, again, I'm trying to be humble, I can prove it to you. Here is the cover of my latest book, How to Exit a Plane in a Wingsuit. And I should, for those who aren't wingsuiters or are new to skydiving, point out this is very, 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 very not how you exit a plane in a wingsuit. In fact, the exact opposite of how one exits a plane in a wingsuit. And I haven't got much better, to be frank. So my skydiving kind of journey started about 5 years ago. Although my parachuting career started a lot earlier than that. About 20 years ago, I was a paratrooper in the Army, specifically doing airborne bomb disposal. And I should say, genuinely, right, I get asked this question about how you defuse a bomb, in free fall or on a canopy, genuinely. And you've got to kind of explain to them, no, the idea is to jump out the plane, and then land, and then defuse the bomb, rather than in air. Not you would have much time, because obviously normal sort of para jumps are done static line, and you jump from 600 feet or 500 feet, as some of the jumps we do were 500-foot jumps. And it's quite weird how your kind of perception and your default of how you appreciate altitude changes. So back then, 600 feet was a standard jump. That was normal. So when I started my AFF, which is down in Spain, they want you to jump from like 13.5 grand, which is terrifying. Whereas now, the idea of jumping from 500 feet is terrifying. I mean, by 500 feet, I'm planning my last turn on the finals. By 500 feet, I know exactly how far from where I wanted to land I'm actually going to land. So I did my AFFs about 5 years ago, and then somewhat serendipitously, I was offered the chance to do a BBC Science series called Cloud Lab. And this was about 3 years after I started doing TV presenting. And the idea of Cloud Lab was a BBC Science series, and we're looking at the atmosphere and weather and how that affects kind of all life on Earth. And we had, proper scientists, meteorologists, atmospheric scientists. We had a doctor specialising in sort of human extreme medicine and research, and then myself, who clearly was the laboratory monkey that they fire into space to bring back data for the proper academics. And it wasn't just skydiving, I was doing mountaineering and climbing and free diving and that sort of stuff as well. But skydiving was clearly a big part of it. It was called Cloud Lab, and they wanted me to do 2 sort of different jumps. Now, the first jump was fairly simple. We were going to get out of a plane in DeLand in Florida, over the top of a big building storm cloud. Obviously, somebody more experienced and knowledgeable than me was going to pick that cloud to make sure it was still safe to jump, because paragliders and paramotors have actually been sucked up into these clouds, because how they build is these big towers full of energy, and they suck up moisture from the ground. So the idea was that we'd open our parachutes a couple of grand above the top of the cloud, and we'd fly our parachutes down the side of these big clouds, scoop underneath, and then and maybe try and get some lift actually, and see. We had a lot of scientific devices strapped to us to measure things like temperature and moisture and any sort of changes in lift that we got due to the building energy of the storm cloud. I say we because I was with the person who was my instructor on this and the safety supervisor for the whole of the series, a guy called Dane Kenny, who some of you may know has been in the skydiving community for, I was going to say 150 years, but I think he's sat here today, so I don't want to, but it's been decades. Dane is a bit of a legend in the skydiving community, both the recreational side of things and the military side. Now, I want to show a quick video, and it's more to see if you can pick up a couple of things that as skydivers might cause you to raise an eyebrow.
after 7,000 feet to reach the cloud tops. Now Andy's instruments can set to work. They've managed to fly into the edge of the cloud and are soon met by its powerful updraft.
Now 3,800 feet. I'll get some good readings on the flight check.
Excellent, mate, good job. Andy, I want you to head towards the drop zone. You should be able to see the drop zone. Head towards the sun.
Now to complete his data set is reach the ground.
Data, Andy, data safe, mate.
So a few things in there. First, you'll spot that, well, I landed a long way from where we were. I should have done by the camera, and yet the POV shows me landing right in the middle of the gravel circle. Also, the POV camera shows that my jumpsuit's black, and actually my jumpsuit was red. And that because all the head cam stuff is from Dane. I wasn't allowed to wear a head cam because I didn't have my C license at this point. So it's quite an advanced jump for someone with their B license. You'll also notice that I was wearing an open face helmet, which I still do sometimes if I'm jumping camera these days. But the reason I was wearing an open face helmet was because I couldn't wear a full face helmet because I didn't have my B license either. I had my A license and about 28 jumps, I think it was. So, you know, this is a fairly big jump for someone of that inexperience, that level of inexperience. And it was fairly stressful build up to that. However, it's the second jump I want to spend a bit more time on. Initially started out, they wanted me to jump out of this, the airship. And they said, right, that's going to be, it's probably 10,000 feet is the maximum altitude for the airship. So, yep, that's not a problem, I can do that. Bearing in mind, these discussions were happening before Dane got involved. So I'm in a room of 12 people, TV execs, and none of whom have got any skydiving experience. So when you've got your A license and 28 jumps, you are still the expert in the room. But what is critical to remember is that doesn't actually make you an expert. So they started off with like, yeah, it's going to be 10 grand. I was like, okay, I can do that. And then a bit more chatting with the airship company, and it turns out that it's to do with weight, and that's 10,000 if no one's in the airship, including the pilot. And actually it's 5 grand. I was like, okay, I normally open at 5 grand, but I think if we get out, hop and pop, I got a good exit, that should be okay. But then it turns out that's just the pilot and the co-pilot. Actually, with the crew in there, it's 2 grand. And by that time, I'm getting like, I'm not jumping out of anything at 2 grand with my A license. And as it was, actually, the cruising altitude with all the crew in there and all the filming kit was 1,000 feet, which clearly, you basically just get out and go straight on your AD. So that all got kiboshed. And the second jump became something slightly different. And they said, right, we want you to jump out of a plane at a high altitude. And I thought, right, no problems at all with that, assuming they meant 13,500 feet, 14, 15,000 feet, normal stuff. But that would be high altitude to them, who have been recently speaking about 1,000, 2,000 feet. No, it was 28,000 feet. Which, yeah, it's a pretty advanced jump. I mean, nowadays, I would jump at the chance of this and it wouldn't bother me in the slightest, but back then, stress levels are going up. And when I'm giving this to a non-skydiving audience, I explain in a bit more detail about the problems with jumping at these sort of altitudes. So I'll go through them very quickly. It's all through the fact that the atmosphere up there is rarefied, it's much thinner. So your acceleration is faster, and also your terminal velocity is much greater. And therefore, I was instructed by Dane that you've got 3 to 5 seconds to pull your chute, because what we're doing here, I should add, was a HAHO jump. So it's high altitude, high opening, effectively a hop and pop, is what we call it. And because the concern was that if I continued free fall after sort of maybe 10, 15 seconds, I'd be traveling at too fast a speed to open it. I get problems with hard openings, opening shock, potential injuries to myself, and obviously potential failures on the main canopy. So I had 5 seconds out the door and pop. What's key is that you do a nice exit and get stable, but it's a bit harder to get stable in rarefied air because it's just a bit thinner. It's a bit like doing a balloon jump versus exiting a beach doing 90 mile an hour on a run-in. It's a high wind, but bang, you can kind of go any shape you want, and you can correct that. Whereas you do a bad exit on a balloon, it takes you a few seconds to build that speed up before you can actually do anything about your body position. So, you know, what is absolutely key with this jump was the exit. That was the key part. The crux move of this jump was the exit. Because the other problem is that, you know, there's very little oxygen up there, so you have to wear O2 equipment, otherwise you'll suffocate and pass out within a minute or two. But because I was doing a HAHO jump, and I'd be up in that sort of atmosphere for some considerable time, well over half an hour, I had to carry that supplementary oxygen with me. So I had a 3-litre bottle of compressed O2 and a breathing system, sort of fighter pilot helmet that I've got on there. And you can just see Dane on the edge, probably shouting at me for something I've done wrong. And to top it all off, it was Halloween. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. The other thing you'll notice from this picture and the previous picture is the amount of snag hazards I've got on me. So again, you know, now that I've done quite a few jumps, and a lot of them being filming jumps, I'm used to jumping out with literally 4 or 5 cameras strapped to me in various places. Back then, A license holder, you've got this full face mask on, you've got you know, armoured hose that comes down, you've got a 3-litre oxygen bottle strapped to you that kind of sticks out. You have this nav board, get to the front of it there, that sticks out, a big metal plate, and on that you've got scientific collection devices, because the idea of the jump was I was getting data from various altitudes on the way down. Various biological and sort of scientific data collection devices, you know, a camera is obviously strapped to the nav board and to myself. GPS and compass, because it's been dropped about, I think, 22 kilometres from the actual landing area. And then up this arm as well, I had more like UV readers and all that sort of stuff on this arm. So there's a lot going on. However, as I mentioned before, Dane was supervising this, and you know, it was his job to make sure that I was comfortable and happy. And I got on very well with Dane, and he kind of I think made this whole thing happen. If it not been for him, this jump would never have happened. Because there's added constraints to a jump like this, above and beyond the skydiving and the sort of physics and the equipment. And it's the fact we're filming it and all the extra pressures that come with you. So you've got pieces of camera, you've got scripts to memorize, you've got constant kind of cameras in your face, and the director, you know, asking you questions and wanting reactions, because he's got a picture in his head what he wants for that final edit. On the way down, I had cameras to operate as well as the science equipment. I had pieces of camera to do, you know, I had basically a script to try and memorize as well as navigate myself back to the drop zone. So again, all doable, and but for someone with my limited level experience at that time, it was a fairly stressful and anxious build-up. And nor do we get the amount of training that we asked for, myself and Dane asked for, because of various problems with weather, which was unusual in Arizona, because we did this in Eloy, out over the Arizona desert, but because of various paperwork and insurance problems and health and safety issues with the BBC that kind of compressed our training time to less than what we wanted. So it ended up being that, you know, we'd go up with some kit strapped to me, because again, on top of all that, I had all the comms kit, I had a solid-state voice recorder, I had 3 radios and a junction box. So we'd go up with some kit, I'd do a jump, would land, assuming Dane was happy, more kit, up, do it, land, more kit, up, do it. So effectively, every jump was harder than the last. So every jump was the hardest jump of my life. So, but it got to the point where I thought we were pretty much there, and Dane thought we were. And it's handy now I have the experience to make calls. And for my times of bomb disposal loss and doing high-risk search, so doing things like cave diving and being a mountain guide, I'm pretty good at doing risk assessments and threat assessments and deciding when to go and no go. And nowadays I have the experience and the confidence, and I've called jumps on filming jumps before when the weather's been, or the winds have been too high up. Because the bottom line is this, it's TV. Okay? There are things in life that are worth dying for. Making telly is not one of them. But fortunately, Dane was there to make the call, and the fact that he had sort of confidence in me was well, made the whole thing a little bit more doable.
So I know this is very important, but we can't do that if you've got an issue with the parachute. I think.
Are we?
Good. Right. Let's get out there.
Look at that. Steady as a rock. But I shoot with his hand.
You'll be fine, mate.
And then I was. 28, well, it was slightly lower than 28 in the end, out above the Arizona desert, and stood in the doorway ready to go. And we practiced this the day before. We did a 16 grand jump and a 5 grand jump. The 5 grand one was the one I was most nervous about, because a 5 grand hopping pot with all this kit on, if anything gone wrong, you've got pretty limited time to sort it out. At least from this sort of altitude, you've got a couple of minutes before your AD fires. And Dane was there, ready, set, go. And I didn't move. And afterwards, the director and the cameraman said that we thought you'd bottled it. We thought you weren't going to go. And they said, you know what, actually, with the week you've had, we wouldn't have held it against you. But I mean, there's a huge amount of, say, money and time and effort had gone into this jump. And genuinely, the thought of not jumping never crossed my mind. The reason I paused in the door was because even back then, with so few jumps under my belt, I could appreciate just how privileged I was to stand in that door and what a unique experience it was. And actually, what I didn't appreciate at the time, but I do more so now, that even if you do get a chance to do a 28 grand or a high altitude jump, usually, you know, time is critical. It's often part of a big way or a record attempt. So the green light goes on and you go, and you are bang, 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 because timing is critical. You don't have a chance to pause, and I did. Because where I jumped, 20 kilometers from the landing area or 21 kilometers wasn't going to make a massive difference. And I just took a few seconds in the door to kind of look at that view and appreciate, where I was. And then I jumped. And, as you can probably tell already, ballsed up the exit. I was going to go out, turned into a bit of a dive, counted in my head 1, 3, 2, 3, and at 5 seconds-ish, I was kind of still slightly head down and turned to my left, and I just thought, bollocks it, and through. And fortunately, the canopy opened beautifully, no twists at all. It was a nice big 230 canopy, nice big canopy. Lovely soft opening, and we started down it. And I got the cameras sorted out. Off my brakes first, checked the canopy, got my brakes out, sorted the cameras and the science kit, and then just tucked my hands up behind myself, between my back and my rig, because it was like minus 18 Celsius at that altitude, and just kind of harness steered it back towards the landing area. And it turned out the GPS and the compass were unnecessary from a navigation point of view. Obviously, the GPS would have been very handy had I landed miles off and injured. I could have at least called in through the radio my coordinates. But that was my track back. The line here on the sort of up this side up here is the running of the plane. This is my track here, going back towards the drop zone, because I could actually see the landing area. The day was so clear that I could see the landing area. I flew over a couple of highways and some mountains, and it was a very peaceful, calm flight. I'd lost comms with the plane and the ground crew by this time, which made the whole thing very, very peaceful. It was nice. And as I came down, I had to hang loose here and lose a lot of altitude, because they didn't want me leaving that sort of the fields you can see there until it's below 6,000 feet, because obviously they didn't want a canopy into the main drop area, at like 10 grand, because it's dangerous. And then I swung around the back, came in, and it was a thing of beauty, if I do say so myself. Landed right in the middle of the landing area, came in, flare, and touchdown. And I looked towards where the camera should have been. Unfortunately, the crew with the camera landed 15 minutes after me. And they had no footage of the landing. Now, from an edit point of view and a TV point of view, that means you've got a last bit, the essential bit of the story to kind of finish that story arc. So what they did was they'd filmed the jump yesterday, the day before, and they decided to use the footage from that landing. Unfortunately, that was the 16 grand jump. And what that taught us was that the racer, I was wearing a racer container and harness, had cut into the back of my legs, and I'd lost, basically cut the blood off my legs. I'd lost all feeling in my legs. And I hadn't realised this. So when I came in the 28 grand, the big jump, obviously I'd moved I was moving my leg loops forward and back during the canopy ride. And at about a grand, I was like jogging on the spot. I was shaking my legs out and doing that, make sure my legs were alive. The 16 grand jump, I didn't realise that my legs were basically useless until I hit the ground. So this is the landing they showed to 2.5 million people.
There's one thing the team haven't foreseen that jeopardizes the entire experiment.
Oh yeah, Sky
Now
Yard.
the sample is at risk of contamination.
You're all right, mate.
So since then, I've gone on, we've done about 12 different TV skydiving things in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. Lots of the one show, doing wingsuiting, doing flat, doing speed stuff. And the one show is great. It's not the sort of stuff that any skydiver, I imagine, in here really watches. But it's a great way to reach an audience who would otherwise not really experience or see skydiving. It gets between sort of 6 and 9 million viewers, and it's mostly, the average person in the street. So with these films, we've always been very sort of proactive about showing skydiving in a good light, and actually in an accurate light. Because the misconception out there is that skydiving is all like death wish, kind of suicidal adrenaline junkies who chin Red Bull and that's about it. And that skydiving operations are run by complete cowboys who, are just completely lawless. Whereas actually the reality is it's probably the most heavily regulated sport in the country. We are policed by the same people who police Heathrow and Gatwick. You've got to show like reams of documentation to even get on a jump plane. And the average, you go down your local drop zone, and the average demographic is a 40-year-old bloke with 2 kids. That's the reality of skydiving. So to try and show it as an accessible sport, that's not just the kingdom of elite, like suicidal athletes, and actually anybody can skydive. We've got a guy, Roger HAHO, at Dungerswell, who's 71, I think, this year, and still jumping regularly. But I want to finish off speaking about a kids series I did last year. So I did a children's series for children's BBC called Beyond Bionic. And the premise of this was we'd look at a really cool animal that had a really cool ability, and I'd try and match that. And eventually I'd have to use technology and engineering to kind of match or beat that animal. And it gives an opportunity to look at cool animals, which is good for kids always love, but also gives a chance to talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, and physics. Because if you go to a 9-year-old, or to be fair, any probably normal person in the street, and you said, right, I'm going to talk to you about the coefficient of drag and glide ratios and the physics of acceleration and gravity, they'd be like, nah. Okay, I'll do it while I was jumping out of a plane. All right, now I'm in. So it gave me a chance to watch some really good cameramen. We had Market on there, James McDonald. We had Spike and Jackie Harper, Rob Franklin, and then Mikey Lovemore on as you look at it on the right-hand side, who's my sort of main cameraman. And he's filmed most of the stuff that we'll see in a second. And it's handy. I met Mike by doing speed, and he filmed some of the speed stuff we did, but we are very good friends. We jump a lot together kind of recreationally, which does help, because often in these shoots, these are not Hollywood shoots or US big shoots. For the one show, for example, you've got to do the entire film, including the skydiving, in a day. That's all the budget will allow. So you might get 1 or 2 jumps to get the shots you need. So the fact you jump together makes things much, much easier. You know what your fall rate's going to be like, how you both react to certain things, and how you both exit, your keys, all that sort of stuff is important when you've got 1 or 2 jumps to get the footage. It's also handy because he often does me little favors like this. Skydiving cameraman and visor closer. It's because I never jumped with shades on, that's what it is. I never jumped with shades on, apart from that day because it was so hot. And, I was just in the plane and thinking my visor was down. There we go. That's what he's there for, that's what gets paid the big bucks. So, the first episode that involved skydiving was the flying squirrel. And looking at the flying squirrel and how the fact that it's one of nature's great gliders. So the idea was to try and match its glide ratio. So we started off doing hang gliding. I did a tandem hang glide, which we basically landed, went up, and we did that 5 times in one morning. I was trying to self-film with a camera. I was on the pilot was there next to me, and I'm trying to self-film and do piece to camera, and I felt so rough. I'm not a great passenger, you know, that's why I've no interest in doing a tandem. I'd be terrible at it. But yeah, I was trying to do these pieces of camera and talk about, you know, glide ratios and this big bit of skin that's above my head and how I'm gliding whilst trying not to be sick. But with that aside, you know, the problem with that was that, well, it's me and a machine. It's not me, actually me trying to beat the flying squirrel. We moved on to skydiving. And we did a bit of tracking, obviously. The first thing you go is you do a bit of tracking. And then the glide ratios from that weren't quite good enough to match the flying squirrel. So the next and final and probably predictable step for you guys was to inject a bit of technology into that and move on to the wingsuit. This is in a horizontal tunnel, a wind tunnel in Southampton University. And we used it a lot, actually, both for some of the stuff I did for the one show, but also we used it quite a few times on Beyond Bionic. And you'll see some footage from that in a few slides' time. Great bit of kit. You could sort of then talk about how the wingsuit isn't a big flap of skin, which is most people's conception of a wingsuit, but actually it's a double layer of skin that inflates, just like one of our canopies, to create that aerofoil, which matches the wings that we use and the wings on an airplane, and that's what gives you lift and increases your glide ratio. So again, you're injecting basically physics, aeronautical physics, into a program for kind of 9 and 10-year-olds, but they're responsive to this because, you know, wingsuits are cool. So we finally did a jump filmed by Spike Harper, who is like a world-class wingsuiter. And that's one thing I would say, actually, because I get asked about people when they have interest, maybe getting involved with filming skydiving stuff. Most of the time, you need to be a very, very, very good camera operator and understand the cameras. With skydiving, it's less important. There's only so much input you can have in that camera before you leave the ground. So if you've got limited camera kind of experience and knowledge, myself and the cameraman, the full-time camera operator, can set the camera up for how best to operate in the conditions that, you know, we're looking at the time from the ground. What's far more important is the skill of the skydiver, because we could say somebody else can set the camera up to the right settings, but you're the only one that can get into the right place at the right time. You also need to be good enough to compensate for my rubbish skydiving. This was a brand new suit we just got off Phoenix. We've only got 2 jumps to get the footage for the series. And it was my first and second jump in this new suit. The exit was surprisingly not that rubbish, actually, for me, all things considered. So here's some of the footage that Spike managed to get, even though I was doing my best to kind of mess him up.
This final jump.
And it might also be the first piece of wingsuit live wingsuit piece to camera.
2-to-1 glide ratio of one of the most aerodynamic creatures on Earth. I have to believe that I can.
This is it, Andy. Crunch time. 3, 2, 1, go!
The position's good, and this time I've got control of the suit. I can feel myself, I'm not falling as fast as before. I think I've got the lift I need.
You've hit squirrel speed, my friend.
This is incredible. It's amazing to think that finally I am gliding just like a flying squirrel.
And you look like one too. In fact, you could be a brand new blue and orange species.
Now this is Beyond Bionic.
Everything is coming together, and this jump feels really good. But it's all down to the results. Have I matched the glide ratio of the flying squirrel?
And probably my first ever wingsuit opening in about 120 wingsuit jumps where I didn't have any twists, which was nice. Clearly, with a wingsuit, we managed 2-to-1 was what the squirrel can manage, and with a wingsuit, even with me operating the wingsuit, you can get a better glide ratio than 2-to-1. So from there, we moved on to another animal, and this was so at the start of each episode, we went a big kind of stunt to open it up to tease out. Big stunt at the start, and then the animal reveal with me kind of holding the animal or by the animal if it was like a gorilla or a shark. And we didn't have an opener for the hummingbird episode. So we're starting sort of a development meeting, and So is there any ideas we could do to kind of open this episode? And I was like, I've got one. Okay. So how about this? How about we're in a, so I had never jumped from a helicopter before this point. I really wanted to jump out of a helicopter. So I said, how about we start in a helicopter? And I say, you know, today's episode is all about nature's very own, helicopter, you know, the champion hover of the natural world. And obviously the default, we need to look at, first of all, can I hover without any technology? And then I just literally step backwards. And then I'm gone. Cool opener. And they went, yes. And that's exactly what we did.
This final.
What I should say is, before I show you the footage, is that this is again, I was speaking with Mikey and the fact we jumped together a lot anyway. We had no key here because there's a cameraman sat in the back of the helicopter, Mike on one side, me on the other side. And the idea was I'd deliver this piece of camera and then I'd just drop away straight away. So I couldn't kind of deliver the piece of camera and then go. So the idea was I'd deliver this piece of camera to the camera there, you know, Mike was across from me there, and literally I just turn and go. So I got myself practiced the line a few times and I gave him a big thumbs up and I tried to lead with my elbow to give him a fraction of a warning because he needed to leave about, you know, almost a quarter of a second before I did because the shot they wanted was him beneath me looking up at me on his back with the helicopter kind of disappear in the background. So yeah, I had to go and go. We'd one chance again to get this right. He'd deliver the piece of camera, lead of the elbow, turn, and then I just had to fall backwards. But fortunately, pretty much managed it.
Cool helicopter, Andy, but A, where are the doors? And B, what are you up to?
Today, I'm looking at nature's very own version of a helicopter.
Okay.
I'm going to try and match its hovering abilities.
Whoa, sit back down.
If I want to be successful, I won't be using a helicopter.
That's enough showing off. Now get back in.
I've got to find a way to make myself hover. Let's give it a go.
Andy, no!
No, I can't hover.
I could have told you that before you threw yourself out of a helicopter, donut.
What you forget, because you know when you kind of view the world through kind of relativity, everything is relative to your own experience. So you hang out at drop zones all the time. You know your mates are skydivers. You know what you forget? You forget how cool skydiving is. You really do. Or how we did the shoot, and you know this was like one of the first skydiving shoots we did. The crew were like blown away. They're like, it was just two blokes falling out of a helicopter. To us, but to them they were blown away. And again, from the feedback from both parents, kids and teachers, and there's been a lot of feedback from the series when it went out last year, they absolutely loved the skydiving episodes. That's the thing that gave them the biggest thrill. You know, and they were most into the kind of, and actually the physics and the sort of the educational points we're trying to get across seemed to hit home a lot more with the skydiving episodes than anything else. So the final episode that involved skydiving was with the Peregrine Falcon. The Peregrine Falcon is the fastest animal in the world. In a stoop, which is a head-first dive towards prey, it can do up to, it's been recorded at doing up to 242 miles an hour. We opened this episode with the Peregrine chasing me. I had a little, basically a lure, which is a bit of dead pigeon, tied, taped to the back of my motorbike helmet. It also gave me the chance to ride this. It's not mine, unfortunately, but it's a Suzuki Hayabusa, an amazing bike that I always wanted to have a go on. And the reason we used this bike is because Hayabusa, bit of pub quiz trivia for you, is Japanese for Peregrine Falcon. So there we go. So this was the Peregrine Falcon episode, as I said. So the idea was that I would try and match it myself, match that free fall speed myself, and then ultimately not be able to do that, which gives us the kind of excuse to then introduce some sort of technology and talk about engineering as well. So by this point now, I'd done a speed thing for the one show a few years beforehand when I'd first got into speed and was pretty rubbish at it. I'm not significantly better now, but I'm a little bit more experienced. This is me in the ISSA World Series last year. Round 4, down dunks, and yes, a Captain America t-shirt does make you go faster, I swear. So yeah, my skydiving kind of come on from there. So my speed jumping had come on since the first one-show shoot. I should also say, it's always worth entering competitions, right? If you're thinking about going to nationals or international competitions that are open to you, go. From my personal point of view, you learn a huge amount. It's really good fun. You've got some of the best jumpers in the country or in the world there. You can feed off. And if in speed skydiving, it's a small competition. You will, for example, on my first competition, my first international one, there was only 12 jumpers. And obviously, I came last. It didn't matter, because I could then say to all my mates back home, yeah, I'm the 12th fastest skydiver in the world. So, and what's nice about this sort of thing when you're filming, the advantage of filming, I've talked about like the stress and the extra stuff, but actually, I still love doing it. You get to do some stuff that you otherwise would never get to do. High altitude jumps, flying your canopy down through storm clouds, heli jumps to that point, I hadn't done any. And what's also nice is that you get the plane all to yourself, which is lovely. So you've got maybe you, skydiving cameraman, the actual cameraman, director, sound man, and probably a jump master in there as well. Because all these guys here weren't jumping there. They've got harnesses on, they're strapped and leashed into the plane, but you still got a jump master in the plane who's not exiting to close the door afterwards. So maximum really is 6 people in the plane. So you've got bags of room to mess about when, obviously your climb to altitude is super fast. It's lovely. You also got time to do stuff. So we did a lot of presenting with me hanging on the outside of the plane. You can just kind of see me out the door here, but there's lots of shots like this. And it wasn't just for this episode, it was for a lot of the episodes, for the trailers, for the lead titles, the whole kind of, hi, I'm Andy Torbet, join me in the new series Beyond Bionic, starting blah, blah, blah. Because again, these were the big kind of exciting moments. The skydiving was really kind of high energy, high octane moments for the series. But how we did this, kind of mechanically, because you can't be doing this at 15 grand for 10, 15 minutes, because without supplementary oxygen, we'd get off and we'd fly around, do cycles at about 5, 6 grand. I'd climb out, I'd do a few pieces of the camera, climb back in, check the director, climb back out, a few more pieces of the camera, climb back in, climb out, do some more, come in, do a costume change, get back out, do another piece from a different episode. You've got all the time in the world, and it's really nice to have your own plane and as much time as the budget has for fuel. Now, I want to show, but going back to the Peregrine Falcon, the idea here, the take-home message for physics-wise was all about drag and the coefficient of drag and really terminal velocity. Because an awful lot of people, pretty much everybody out in the skydiving community, thinks terminal velocity is a fixed constant, i.e. human beings do 120 miles an hour maximum speed towards the ground. That's it. Terminal velocity is 120. Now we all know it's got nothing to do with that. It's mass over drag. So the message we're trying to teach the kids was the idea that, if you're a skydiver and you're falling at 120 miles an hour, you can't change your mass, but if you change your drag, then your terminal velocity goes up. And that's how we will reach 242 miles an hour. So this was the horizontal wind tunnel in Southampton. It was a great way of kind of visually showing the kids, what was happening with air and how it gets disturbed and how
really is cool.
How clearly flying flat towards the ground is very unaerodynamic, there's a lot of drag and therefore makes you slow. So to solve that problem, we then move on to stage 2, which is obviously speed skydiving. You change your angle, you change your the amount of drag you're creating, and did a bit of this, which is quite hard to film, to be fair. Mikey did a very, very good job. The idea was that I would just, we did some dives, but actually in the end, the best way to film it was more on a really steep track, like a very, very steep angle track. So rather than trying to go straight down like you would in a speed jump, just maybe 10, 15, even 20 degrees off vertical. And that meant I could hold a constant path much easier. And it made his job as a cameraman much easier to fly around me to get various shots. But we did some proper speed jumps to get some data. But for the purpose of the story, we had to make sure that I didn't beat the Peregrine Falcon. Because by not beating the 242, that gave us an excuse to move on to technology. Now, there wasn't really any technology that existed to help me with this. And I offered to build some stuff in my garden shed, but apparently that goes against BBC Health and Safety Insurance. So instead, they got a guy from the UK Space Agency, basically the UK space community, to design and build some of these. Now this is iteration 3. I call them rocket boots. Clearly they're not rockets anymore, and nor are they boots, but they started off as rocket boots. They started off as things strapped to my ankles, basically wearing almost like metal-plated Wellingtons, fueled by aviation fuel, a bladder of which the fuel tank was a big sort of flexible bladder to be worn around my waist, pipes coming down to have what was effectively miniature jet engines strapped to my feet. There are a whole host of reasons why that's a terrible idea. Catching on fire was one, you know, burning my feet off was another. It's also where, you know, the guy who designed this is, you know, he's a cleverer man with two heads, you know what I mean? He's a very, very, very intelligent individual, but not a skydiver. And that's when there's some things the guys on the ground, you know, from experience, you gain a knowledge you can't learn anywhere else. The cutaway system was located down on the boot here, which was great to pull there. Even we tested this in the horizontal wind tunnel at Basingstoke, and yeah, you're flying there, you can reach that, that's fine. But you'll know yourselves, if you're hung up under your main canopy from your ankle, spinning, the centrifugal force will be such that the chance of you being able to do a sit-up to reach that pin is pretty much nil. So we wanted them moved up to the thigh, which also actually makes them easier to kind of use. There's much less movement because it's close to the centre of your centre of gravity, and because you're not flailing around with your legs trying to maintain your position in the air. We also sacked the whole aviation fuel jet engine thing because no one would be setting fire. And actually, from a logistical point of view, even if I'd been willing to jump the rocket boots in that state, they required to be warmed up before use, which would meant firing the rockets, turning them on, and flames coming out inside the aircraft, which clearly neither the CCI nor the pilot was very happy about. So in the end, we used these. So these are EDS, electric duct fans. They're effectively electric turbine engines. They're just big fans that spin very fast. Each one gave me approximately 10 to 12 kilograms of extra thrust. And again, the initial cutaway method the guys had designed was just too difficult to use. So in the end, the decision was made. The people best placed to design cutaway systems were skydivers. So myself, Mikey, Jason Farrant from Dungaswell, and Andy Shaw, the chief rigger there, we built a system I'll show in a second to cut the system away. So you can probably see it a lot better from this exit shot. So they are strapped to my legs, and the cutaway system was this. So both the straps had loops that kind of joined, the crenellated loops that joined with a bit of a cutaway cable that ran through them. It ran up the thigh, then ran to another set similar to this that held it onto the belt. Ran through there, and then up to the yellow handle is the central handle for the cutaway system. And that central handle has got cutaway cable going to both legs. So it's one handle with two cables. Pull it, they both just drop off, and it worked extremely well. We tested it on the ground. There was very little resistance, even with the slight kinks in the cable. Slid out really easily, and the thing just fell away. So that was the system that we employed, and it was spot on. And these are the engines I say. The idea was that I'd get out of the plane, would go head down, and then would fire the engines. Now, initially, the guys put on a press switch on my palm for me to operate as I was jumping. But again, that's not ideal. You don't want to be, when you're doing speed or even steep track, you know, you want your hands kind of free. You don't want to be trying to grip with one hand when you're trying to steer the other. Not such an issue if you're doing flat, but if you're doing like 250 miles an hour, little things like making fists with this hand while this hand's flat will spin you out. So we fell back again on normal skydiving practice, and we had a bite switch wired into the engines. And it was initially, again, the guys were like, right, so it's one bite for on, 25% power. If you double bite, it'll go at 50% power. 3 bites is 75. 4 bites is 100% power. Cool. Like, no, mate. I want it on or off. That's it. I can't deal with anything more complicated than that. So bite down, 100% power. You know, not bite, off. It was as simple as that. Now, because of health and safety, again, we weren't allowed to do these jumps with people in the aircraft, so it's just myself and Mikey, and that was it. It is brilliant to have an entire Beach 99 all to yourself. It is very luxurious, but not for very long. We made the ground to 15 grand in about 4 minutes, which is quite incredible. Surprising what the extra weight of skydivers does to the climb rate of an aircraft. Again, you get time in the door to sort yourselves out. And surprisingly, I wasn't nervous. You know, it's going back to the HAHO jump. This is the exact opposite of that, really. In that the sort of intervening 500-odd jumps had made me realise, right, and now I understand how skydiving works. I understand how the equipment works. I understand what these safety drills actually mean, what they're for, and how to perform them. And I also knew that actually the snag hazards were pretty minimal. They're on my thighs, that's it. And as long as I did a nice, stable and strong pull, would have no problems at all. So we got in the door and jumped. You can see the bite switch in my mouth here. We've got 2 jumps to film this, and this is some footage. All was going well, just making sure that I could actually reach my handles, no interference there, and then we went into the speed jump. Now you notice I'm flailing quite a lot with one of my legs. My hands are out, it's pretty bad. Also that Mikey is quite far away from me the whole time. And that wasn't just a safety issue. The problem we had on the jump was that it turned out they'd been built, both propellers were rotating the same way, when they should have been counter-rotating, which meant that as I was jumping, I was just constantly spinning to my left, and actually not in a straight dive, but I was spinning left, but also across the sky like that, which is why I had to keep putting in loads and loads of opposite kind of rudder to try and stop that from happening. And Mike's trying to do a speed jump whilst chasing me, tracking across the sky, which made the jump quite difficult to do. However, we did manage to get down there in the end in one piece.
And that's it. I'm out of sky and out of time. Parachute open, challenge over.
That was super fast. You could feel the power. There's a bit down on the switch. And the EDS kicked in, but when I land, I'll find out just how fast that was.
Style it out, Andy.
Was it fast enough? Was it faster than that magic 242 miles per hour the Peregrine Falcon managed? Let's find out. 257 miles an hour.
Oh, like supersonic.
Now that is Beyond Bionic.
The Peregrine Falcon, the second fastest animal in the world. Although that said, even with rocket power, I still would be 12th place in an ICA speed skydiving competition, it turns out. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along this afternoon. If you have any bright ideas about skydiving and filming, I'll always try and involve people who give us ideas for filming. The best way to get me is on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. Or come and see me after the talk. Apart from that, thank you very much for coming along this afternoon, and hopefully I'll get to jump you all guys soon. Thank you.